Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today I am doing the Contradictions book tag. This tag was created by Only If for a Page, and I was tagged by Cliff over at Cliff's Dark Gems. There are 8 prompts. Prompt number 1. I love this genre, but I didn't like this book. The genre I'm picking is horror, and the book is The Worm by Stephen Laws. I read that in the early aughts. It was when I was traveling to Canada. I had a paperback book. And essentially, the story is there's this town, there's these beings that awaken. They're sort of like zombies, sort of like vampires. The author is just, inventing his own creature based on a mishmash of other monsters. And it was all right. It was never going to be one of my favorite horror novels. But then there's this group of people. I don't remember their characters' names. I read it a long time ago. And they're running away from the monsters. And they escape into a church. And in the church, the monsters are slowly creeping in. And then there's this little girl. She's the daughter of one of the other characters. And the little girl points a finger to the zombies. In the name of Jesus, meek and mild, I tell you to go away. And all the zombies go, oh. They're so scared of this little girl talking about Jesus, meek and mild, that it gives the characters enough time to escape from the creatures. And I was just going, like, why do these creatures give a freak about Jesus, meek and mild? If I were a zombie vampire creature and that little girl came pointing at me, telling me to be gone in the name of Jesus, meek and mild, I'd eat her hand, watch her mother cry, and the mother come and attack me, and then I'd eat the mother. And then all the other characters can escape while I'm eating the mother and the child. Now that would be a real horror book. Prompt number 2. I rarely read this genre, but I love this book. I'm actually going to name it Trilogy, even though I've only technically read the first 2 of this trilogy. And I'm talking about 5 Warrior Angels by Brian Lee Durfee. Brian Lee Durfee is a booktuber, and that's how I was introduced to this series. It is, I guess you would call it, an epic fantasy, and I rarely read fantasy. A little over a year and a half ago, the Brian Lee Durfee came up and talked about he has a medical condition and he's probably going blind. And then he talked about how important audiobooks are going to be for him. So, in support, I bought the first audiobook. That was The Forgetting Moon. I guess it's a traditional fantasy. There's a lot of traditional tropes that I could be a little more in-depth on if I read more fantasy. But it felt like he was borrowing heavily from a lot of other fantasies. You had a lot of non-human races, which would translate to dwarves, elves, and orcs. He gives them slightly different names, except for the dwarves. But it was a fun story. And what really excited me was when he ended that book, he ended on a note that totally shocked me, that I was not expecting it to come out of that. So I just finally got around to reading the second book in the series, which is called The Blackest Heart. Again, I picked it up on audiobook. And I really enjoyed it. It was like a 36-hour audiobook, so it took me a long time to get through it. But I enjoyed it. It was a pleasant reading experience, or a pleasant listening experience. Even though I could tell you, yeah, he's following some common tropes in fantasy, I think. I'm not well versed enough in fantasy to say exactly what they are. But it is adult. There are some sex scenes. There are some swearing. There's lots of gritty violence. So I can highly recommend them. Prompt number 3. I love this trope, but I didn't like this book. One of my favorite storylines is humans going out on an adventure or a trip and coming across this enclave with mysterious creatures. Because that's a lot of fun. You got like The Lost World by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, places like that. But this book I'm talking about is called Fragment by Warren Fay. In this, there's an island somewhere out in the Pacific that has been isolated, and it has evolved its own unique species of animals. And these animals are super violent. They will attack anything that sets foot on this island. And they'll eat each other, but I especially think they love people coming on the island to eat them. Although who knows how often that happens. But it just got really bad towards the end. It just disappointed. I think the author had watched one too many movies to be a really good novel. And there is one really egregious product placement where there is a product that I will not name in this video. You can buy it at any store, and they hand it to a monster, and the monster goes, "Ah, so refreshing." Okay, the monster didn't say, "Ah, so refreshing," but you get the idea. And that just really killed a mediocre book for me. Prompt number 4. I hate this trope, but I loved this book. I don't like books about teenagers, especially young adult books. They just don't usually work for me. So stories with teenagers are usually, you just set them aside. Not for me. But there's one really great book that has a teenage narrator, and that is A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. This is a dystopian novel set sometime in the future in England, where you have a character named Alex who likes to go for the ultra violence. He's a mean-spirited kid. He will harm people. He will rape people, and be an outright nasty young man or boy. And this is a wonderful book. It is written in a slang that Anthony Burgess invented himself. It's sort of a cross between Russian and English and just teenage jargon. And it just drags you into the book. And when I say drags you into the book, it makes you think about language and how people talk. And Alex is kind of an interesting character. He's not necessarily a likable character, but he's brings you in and say like, wow, this is a bad boy. Now, when this book was originally published in America, the American publishers cut off the last chapter. The English book has 21 chapters, but the first American editions only had 20 chapters. And that 20th chapter totally changes your perspective of the book and totally changes the way that the reader will perceive Alex. Now, I will not say what that is, although I will say that the American movie by Stanley Kubrick is based on the American edition of the book. So if you've seen that movie and seen the end, you will get the wrong impression of Alex. Prompt number 5. I love this author, but I didn't like this book. And I am going for No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy. I think Cormac McCarthy is a fascinating author. He was highly skilled and literate and literary, but No Country for Old Men was just a big disappointment to me. I remember pre-ordering it and getting it in the mail when it was a hardcover and just diving into it and going, this book is just okay. Part of the reason the book is just okay is that it was originally a film script idea that didn't go anywhere, so he turned it into a novel. It was eventually turned into a movie, a very, very popular movie. And I think this book gets a lot of cred from that movie. The movie people like this book because they like the movie. That's my opinion. Prompt number 6. I previously disliked a book by this author, but I love this book. Well, my notes were a little faulty. That's why there's sort of a skip in the continuousness of this video. And the book that I previously disliked was Burr by Gore Vidal. That is an historical novel about Aaron Burr, the Vice President of the United States, who murdered Alexander Hamilton in a duel. And I DNF'd that book the first time I tried to read it. Just didn't like it. Then I tried the audiobooks of 2 other Gore Vidal novels, Creation and Julian. Those are both historical novels set in biblical era and the Roman Empire. And both of those were fascinating books. So I eventually went back and tried the audiobook of Burr, and I liked it better and got through it. So your opinions of books that you dislike can eventually change. Prompt number 7. I love this cover, but I didn't like this book. All right. Look at the gorgeousness of this cover. The Morgau rises. You got this worm, maggot, some sort of creature with very sharp teeth, eating a woman. And you can see she's sort of hanging upside down from the mouth by the way her hair is fallen. And this cover is just pure pulp horror goodness. And the novel, when I read it, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, well, the novel's a dud. There's nothing to it. The cover is everything. I remember someone reviewing Peter Tremaine's books, The Ants, and thinking that the book itself was kind of lame too. So here you have 2 lame books by the author, The Ants and the Morgau Rises, even though I have not read The Ants. But this cover, just look at this cover. It is just utter magnificence. And the book is just so Prompt number 8. I didn't like this cover, but I love this book. Let's go with Ed McBain, Cop Hater. This is the first in his 87th Precinct novels. And this cover is just, is just boring. It's bland. There's a whole lot of series in this blue bland cover, but inside are some rather excellent police procedural novels. Ed McBain just has a way of telling a very simple story straight off, and you enjoy it, and you read the book, and then you're done. I know this is Criminali's favorite author. I don't think he'd ever make it as my favorite author, but he's darn good at what he does. But the cover, it's lackluster. It just does not have the imagination that a good police procedural written in was this the 50s or the 60s? I can't quite remember. He was writing those books for a long time. Yeah, this one is 56. And let me just show you the kind of covers you got back in the good old days of Ed McBain 87th Precinct novels. There you go. This is sort of a black and white photo. You can see the guy. Looks like he's just been shot. Now this is the kind of cover that all the Ed McBain books can have, but you're not going to get them because they don't do covers like this anymore. And that is the end of the Contradictions book tag. Who am I going to tag? I'm going to tag the Holmes Boys, where we are doing the Holmes is where the heart is. So in this tag is Mark at Book Time with Elvis, Jim, Mystery and Mayhem, and Randy at the Literate Texan. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.